This episode of Push to Smart contains spoilers for the Dragon Age franchise. Hello and welcome back to Push to Smart. This week we're gathering around the digital water cooler to discuss the latest in the Dragon Age franchise, Dragon Age Inquisition. This episode we're going to be comparing Inquisition to the previous game in the series, Dragon Age 2. We mentioned in our Game of the Year 2014 episode about how Dragon Age Inquisition was almost good enough for our list, but didn't quite make it. And for me, the easiest way to do that is to compare its failings, in particular, to Dragon Age 2.
Which is a funny thing to say because Dragon Age 2 took such a beating when it first came out. And it is in no way, shape, or form a perfect game. It has a lot of problems. But it has weirdly different problems than Dragon Age Inquisition that I think made it overall a better experience.
Yeah. Well, the big thing that Dragon Age 2 was knocked for was how repetitive the gameplay was. Mm-hmm. I mean, they really did not have that many areas, and you just kept going through the same ones over and over.
It was necessarily minimalist based on the fact that they had nothing.
And in this game, it's the exact opposite, where there are so many areas to go, and they're huge, and there are quests just everywhere. Although I will say that I feel like the combat isn't as... Like, it's very similar to the second game.
Yes.
At least for me, playing a rogue. It was very kind of like, okay, I'm going to use the exact same attacks on a cooldown.
You didn't really have a choice because they limited you in this game to, like, what is it, like the 8 quick keys, and that's it. So, like, in previous games, you could hit the radial menu, which we're both playing on PlayStation platform, which is the shoulder button, and it'd pop up and you could select the rest of your spells or abilities or whatever, and you can't do that anymore. But the problem is, when you're limited to those particular attacks, you have to bank on the enemies you're fighting being susceptible to those attacks. And so there's something to be said about having that kind of learning experience of going in, failing, realizing, oh, hey, this giant ogre is actually, vulnerable to XYZ, and I have ABC equipped. Let's go redo that. Except for it auto-saves before major battles, like right when the battle starts, where you can't adjust it. So it felt like it wasn't thought out totally.
When I was playing, I kept on having difficulties with this battle with the dragon, but the autosave was literally right before the dragon woke up, and I'm standing
so
right next to it.
On you. I had one of those. I guess I've never been very good at the tactics in any of the Dragon Age games, so maybe it's a skill thing. But I felt like regardless of what I told them to do, they would eventually just follow me, all the other characters on the board. Like, there was a puzzle. I don't think I didn't even do it in my second playthrough, but like I tried to do it on my first, and it was like multiple switches you had to hit, and I was like, oh, I'm supposed to just leave my characters on them, except for as soon as I told them to hold position, they would just leave.
Oh yeah, when you switch characters, it would totally... Yeah.
It's like,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I guess that's not how you're supposed to solve the puzzle, I guess. But also, what's the point of holding if you don't hold? This is going to get far away from DA2 and more into just like my general complaints about the game. But there was just so many just weird stuff like that where it just didn't do what you expected it to do. And there was no clear reason why it wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You just kind of had to accept, okay, this is just how it goes. Which, again, Dragon Age 2 and Origins are not perfect games. Dragon Age Origins, especially, is just incredibly bloated. And this game bordered on those bad habits. Dragon Age 2 was very repetitive, as we talked about. But I think it's just the fact that this one was released with such confidence and such great word of mouth, and then it's just the same old stuff, if not worse in ways.
It's one of those things where it got really good reviews, which is awesome. And Dragon Age 2 was panned. Well, it wasn't panned. It got kind of goodish, lukewarm reviews, but it felt like as time went on, people kind of looked at it as the black sheep of BioWare. But I still like Dragon Age 2 more.
And I think a lot of it has to do not necessarily with the combat, because I will confess, I play Dragon Age games on easy, especially Dragon Age 2, because I just don't have time for the combat. It's like, this is ridiculous. I'm not here for this. Like, I almost wish they would go just try to, like, they keep kind of circling this good fantasy RPG and they never hit it. So it's like, just quit while you're ahead, do the Telltale thing, and just make it about the story, because that's what's interesting. And Dragon Age 2's story is just really well done in a lot of ways. And part of it, especially in regards to Dragon Age Inquisition, trying to figure out what I didn't like about that game, is the fact that Dragon Age 2 is such a personal story. It has such a smaller scope, which in a way makes it, when all of a sudden that scope explodes at the end, that much more of like a punch in the gut, like, oh my god. But I mean, it starts out so small and tightly coiled. Like, it starts with the main character running away from the big bad from the original game. It's like there's this big conflict going on, and she is not doing that because she's not that kind of person. And it gives her a family, a backstory, and then lets you kind of decide where it can go from there. And I think as a result, it fostered a lot more kind of feeling of authorship with that character. But also, I liked all the supporting characters more. I felt like I got to know them more. And I think it really benefited from that smaller scope where Dragon Age Inquisition is almost too big.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing that I keep coming back to is the smaller scope of Dragon Age 2. I mean, it's all about kind of personal stakes and Hawke and his tightly banded group of friends. In Dragon Age Inquisition, it's, you know, the end of the world. There is a hole in the sky, and there's a guy who rides a dragon, and he is going to screw everything over. And that is a lot harder to invest in.
Yeah.
And another thing that Dragon Age 2 really just kind of trumps the other games in is their cast. Every single character was interesting and unique and had their own voice, and I was compelled by them in different ways. Even if I didn't really like them that much, I didn't think that there was ever, like, an Ogren of the group or...
There was definitely, like, there are parts in Dragon Age Inquisition where I'd, like, be stumbling around Skyhold and I'd be like, oh my god, Cole!
Yeah.
Cole! I forgot you were here!
Which is funny because that's kind of his character.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like, there was nobody like that. And I feel like part of it was so small. And then there's also a lot of just hangout scenes where, like, the characters even, like, you'd walk in to meet, like, with Varric, and then, like, Anders would be walking out, which sometimes it didn't make sense because you've had Anders in your party, and you're like, why is he here? Because you brought him with you. But it also gave the sense that these are people that existed outside of you, and they had their own lives and motivations, and were fully fleshed out. Whereas in Inquisition, there's the Wicked Grace game, which is great and one of the best parts of the game, and that's it.
I really think that where Inquisition, the characters shined the most are in those situations like the Wicked Grace, or like when you know, have drinks with Iron Bull and his crew.
Yeah.
But another thing, and I know this was mentioned as a glitch, is in Dragon Age Inquisition, a lot of players did not have characters interacting with each other while they're just out exploring the world, which was what made me, like, adore the Dragon Age 2 characters, because they all had their own little interactions with each other, different relationships. Like, Isabella and Aveline would always be kind of snarky, and
they grew in that snarkiness. Like, there was, like, they first disliked each other, and then they had this kind of begrudging mutual respect, and then they actually became friends. And that was all through the dialogue that you just heard walking around.
And then you have, you know, like, Isabella is kind of a mentor to Meryl, which was just amazing. And just everything. It was so easy for me to inhabit the character of Hawke, to want to be a part of this world.
You brought up with, like, the Meryl and Isabella thing. Like, same with Varric, too. He was very protective of Isabella, like, or of Meryl. And that made almost me also feel that way towards Meryl, besides the fact that she was just so cute and sweet and Welsh. It's like everybody else kind of had this feeling like, oh, honey, no. And it's like that kind of kept, like, reinforced my feelings, sort of like, I'm going to protect you even though you're a blood mage and you're doing everything wrong. You're just so sweet, and who could leave you by yourself out here? That kind of thing.
But the problem with Inquisition, I think, is that there are like 3 or 4 party members who I just didn't care. They just weren't interesting or compelling.
Part of the problem, and I was talking about this with somebody else earlier today, is the fact that, like, you have all these side characters. They all have one kind of loyalty mission to keep up with the Mass Effect parallel. And then it was done. And, like, the missions were way too short. They added very little. And that would be all you had to go on. And it was not enough for the scope that they were going for. And
the problem, too, is that a lot of times, like, they'd have, like, 2 missions. And one of them was really simple, like, go kill 5 guys. Or go find Grey Warden letters. But then for some of their, like, actual missions, like Vivienne, when you're trying to get the heart for the potion, you don't actually have to have her during the battle. You can just go there and you bring it back to her and she's like, thanks. Come with me. I mean, it just...
Yeah, it was very detached. Which I think is my biggest problem. Like, it felt too gamey at times, and then the game wasn't even that good. Okay, so I think, like, the biggest issue of going from Dragon Age 2 to Dragon Age Inquisition is that Dragon Age 2 laid the groundwork for this conflict between mages and the Templars. And there was a lot of groundwork laid to get there. You had the whole situation with Anders leading up to what he did at the end. But then you also had a lot of things that we saw in the original Dragon Age Origins that were kind of repositioned to service this conflict. So, for instance, demon possessions suddenly where in Origins they were represented by a sexy lady demon, seducing some dude. In this game, it became more about this is what an oppressed people does when they have no other option. Mm-hmm. And that was really a really powerful metaphor. And we see a lot of that kind of thrown away in Dragon Age Inquisition. Like, it feels weird for me to say this because I know a lot of the criticism against the fan reaction in Mass Effect 3 was, well, your choices don't matter anyway. Mm-hmm. Which, yeah, they don't matter in the sense of, no matter what you do, Anders is going to blow up the Chantry. But they always mattered emotionally.
Yeah.
And that was always the key to a good Bioware game. And here, I didn't feel like they mattered emotionally. It felt like the kind of curtain came up, and you could see the kind of mechanisms behind it. And the Templars versus Mages became much more of just a gamey kind of choose what color your cannon fodder is. And that just kind of de-escalated everything, and I never felt like there was a resolution to that conflict, which was an important conflict and was so well done in Dragon Age 2. It just felt like it was either thrown to the wayside or just made into this very transparently gamey thing that had no emotional investment.
But the problem I had is, the game promises you everything's different, everything has changed, you can't go back from this, and then you go into Hinterlands and they're like, oh, those kooky Templar and mages. You have to get by them. They're just attacking. Just walk right through them. It's okay. This happens all the time. You have to choose a side eventually, but, so does everyone.
There's a lot of, lip service paid to the fact that, oh, yeah, there's a war going on. And sometimes you find things you'll find, a body with a note on it or something. But those things seem so far removed from what you're doing. That's just another collection quest. Which, oh my god, this game is so many collection quests and it does not need them, and it makes me...
But in Dragon Age 2, they never set up a mission and then you were free to do whatever. They weren't like, oh, the Arishok are going to kill everybody, but, just get to it when you have time. It was like, you'd get a letter as opposed to, there's a huge hole in the sky, but could you find my grandmother's ring in the snow over there?
Yeah.
And it actually reminded me of Lightning Returns, which there are a lot of side quests in that game. And the whole point is that the world is ending in days' time. But the more that you help people, the more time you have, the more powerful you become. You literally get an extra day to prepare yourself for the end of the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it feels kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm just, killing X amount of monsters, or I'm helping this weird cat person become unpossessed.
As one does.
Naturally. But it's all to help my final mission as a Valkyrie, or whatever they call her. And so it felt, yes, it's gamey, but there is still some sort of narrative stakes.
They give you enough of a hook to feel like you're not
just doing a horse obstacle course. And in Dragon Age 2, they had different threats throughout the different acts of the game. But in this one, it's all one. It's Corypheus, who is a part of the universe previously, but he was just in DLC, and it was supposed to be a very personal, Hawke DLC, because you learned about his father. And now he's back, and he's just kind of like this... He's kind of like Sauron. He's just like this embodiment of bad guy.
Right. Which I think is why they chose him, because he's so clearly evil. And whereas the Mage versus Templar conflict would have been a little bit opaque for new players. And we should say also Corypheus adds a dimension too to the overarching conflict of the Mage versus Templar in the original DLC, because if you bring Anders along, he comments about how he previously thought the stories of the Magisters, of whom Corypheus claims to be a part, was some kind of boogeyman tale made up by the Chantry to make people afraid of magic, where now there's some truth to it. So what else does that mean? That, of course, is not at all explored in Dragon Age Inquisition. Again, that is about religion in a lot of different ways, but somehow doesn't feel like touching that.
He is just kind of like Sauron. He's just like this bad guy.
He becomes the boogeyman that Anders suspected him of being.
But not in a compelling way at all.
Right.
And he also kind of takes these very important instances from the previous games, like the mages and possession, and he kind of just
steamrolls over them.
Yeah, he just kind of steamrolls over them. So, whenever there's the Grey Wardens have turned bad or, somebody is possessed, it's just, it's Corypheus being evil again.
Yeah, possessing them or brainwashing them.
Yeah, and the thing that made demon possession so impactful and meaningful in the previous games is that it
was a deliberate decision made by somebody with agency, and that was their only agency. They could either be destroyed by this oppressive system, or they could subject themselves to demon possession.
Yeah. The system has failed them, and so they've turned to this kind of the dark side of magic.
Which is their only way out. Mm-hmm. Whereas this, whenever that happened, it was Corypheus has brainwashed them. Which I think also really... that's part of the reason the Templar versus Mages conflict felt so gamey and mostly cosmetic in this game, was because regardless of whether you choose to side with the Mages or the Templar, the other side would be brainwashed by Corypheus.
Yeah.
And that it destroyed everything that came before it that made it so meaningful, and it's a shame.
It really is, because, Dragon Age 2 was all about, the oppression of the Mages, and while it's not, the best metaphor for oppression, because most oppressed peoples, as you often say, they can't just throw a fireball at people,
They can't turn into monsters.
Yeah. If you side with the Templars, then the Mages, are so susceptible to this manipulation that it just kind of proves them right. And then you're like, oh, well.
I think that's an important point. The fact that so much of whatever side you choose, the other side proves you right. Mm-hmm. And there's no space to kind of choose the wrong side and feel regret.
Yeah, there's no real gray area or nuance.
Right. I think that's its biggest flaw. There is no room for regret. It's either you choose one side or the other, and either side you are reinforced in your decision.
Because in Dragon Age 2, there was, there were quote unquote good Templars and there were bad mages. But in this game, if you side with the Mages, then all the Templars are bad and evil and addicted to delirium. And Cullen's just kind of well, I dodged a bullet there, Yeah. Also, with Dragon Age 2, the characters that you could have in your party, a lot of them were kind of touchstones for a lot of conflicts. You had Fenris with the Tevinter slavery, you had Anders with possession with justice and mages, and you have Meryl with blood magic.
And being so sweet.
And being so cute. But in this game, really the only conflict within your party is Vivian doesn't want Cole to be in the party, but Solus wants Cole in the party. So what are we going to do?
It's weird. I couldn't tell when characters would approve of what. Solus seemed to approve you farted, but then
it's true. Literally, if you just say hello to him, he's like, oh, Solus approves.
Greatly approves. Yeah. But then it was he greatly disapproved of my not doing the ritual for the well in my last playthrough, but then he greatly approved of Morrigan drinking from the well, which I would not have anticipated. And it's well, I don't know what you guys want from me. I don't know what you guys are doing.
I mean, other than a few examples, I feel like these characters didn't have as defined personalities and relations between each other as well as with the Inquisitors. So that was just disappointing. So that does it for the first part in our discussion on Dragon Age Inquisition. Obviously, we have a lot of thought about Inquisition's place in the franchise and how it compares to Dragon Age 2, and we would love to hear your opinions on them and what you think about the game, how you compare it to the other entries in the franchise. Please let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date on all of our latest episodes and water cooler discussions.
Have your rest, Inquisitor, but our Oh, sweet nature. Cullen, how's it going?
Is the Inquisitor awake? I thought perhaps we... Oh.
I'm so sorry.
I cannot move my legs.
Is something the matter? Ah!